Hello again. Welcome to RP-0 America. So we're on the pad with our craft destined for Mercury here. As you can see, we're within 24 hours of the Mercury window, and I'm within, pretty close to the moon's inclination, and so that's close enough for me. There we go. I feel like this is a good filler mission. Well, just to fill a gap, because I don't have a Hydrolox, I don't have Gemini tech, and there's a number of missions I'd like to complete that call for those. And so, the Mercury window came up. I managed to get, didn't have to do a crazy redesign of my craft in order to accomplish that mission. And I'm just going to use, my kind of generic-y script to get this into orbit and see. Hopefully it's close to the inclination that I want, because I wasted a bunch of delta V trying to get there by hand. And so even if it's, off by a degree or two, that shouldn't hurt the amount of delta V that it takes to get to Mercury by a ton, I don't think. So it's worth trying this because I waste delta V in my own ways. All right, so let's see. So unfortunately it's a night launch because that's just where the window happened to be to get into. Oh, and I somehow killed my relative inclination label. There we go. That just happens to be where the window is at this point in time to get to this plane. Oh, and I need to do the staging myself, so drop off those boosters. It's pretty much the same, kerosene first stage, Titan 2 pretty much type craft that I was using before, just with some boosters and some modifications to the upper stages to give me a bit more delta V. I pulled some hydrazine out of my Agena, giving it more delta V, and switched to a couple of different hypergolic fuels rather than just hydrazine to get a better efficiency out of my probe. I think those more and more efficient RCS fuels, hypergolic fuels, unlock with certain tech nodes. I don't recall offhand whether it's the construction nodes or what, but you get better RCS efficiency, and so I get way more delta V in my probe itself, which is very nice. So the first real probe that went to Mercury was the Mariner 10, which did a flyby of Mercury, and it launched on an Atlas Centaur, so it was a much more capable launcher and therefore probably much more capable craft than what I have here and now. But if I can get a basic Mercury flyby out of this, that's great. I get more reliability in these engines in this launcher, and it's good practice for any future Mercury mission I plan. The next Mercury mission that occurred, the Messenger. So they named both of them starting with M's, although Mariner probably isn't. The name wasn't really related to Mercury, but the Messenger craft did flybys of other bodies in order to slow itself down to be able to get do its flyby of Mercury at a slower speed than would have otherwise occurred, like this, where I kind of go direct from Earth to Mercury with nothing else going by, nothing else in between. So it's just straight to orbit and then a Hohmann transfer. And so that's, you get a pretty predictable flyby velocity of Mercury, which means you have a pretty predictably high delta V requirement to slow down into Mercury orbit. And an issue with that is, it already costs a pretty good amount of delta V to do to get a flyby of Mercury, and then having to carry even more delta V in order to successfully capture is just would require an extremely large launcher. So NASA, very clever agency as it is, developed techniques where they do flybys and kind of gravity assists with other bodies on the way to Mercury, which requires very precise planning and positioning, so that you get the expected trajectory after doing those flybys of those bodies like Earth and Venus and Mars. I'm not sure if it flew by all of those. I don't think it flew by Mars on the way to Mercury, but did a number of flybys of other bodies that the gravitational assist allowed it to, on the final pass by Mercury, it was moving much slower than my craft would, than just a direct Hohmann to Mercury would set you up for, which means it didn't have to have as much delta V in order to capture around Mercury, which is awesome. And even then, just a flyby of Mercury is a very challenging mission for a craft. Perhaps not in KSP. We don't model certain things, certain technologies. Like let's say just putting something in orbit of Earth would be like, let's say, a level 1 probe, something that could survive the conditions out towards the moon, or just basic interplanetary solar space would be like a level 2 probe, and then being able something that could last long enough to get out to, say, to Mars and Venus, and not only to last like the half a year or so, plus or minus, that it takes to get to those planets, but also those bodies have such a different distance from the Earth that they have completely different temperature conditions. When you're out at Mars, it's going to be much colder because you're further away from the sun, and to boot, you have less power from your solar arrays to support you. And at Venus, the opposite problem. You can get more power from the sun, but you're going to need to account for that in your solar panels to make use of that energy without melting them, and you're going to have to deal with more challenging, higher temperature thermal conditions. And Mercury is just another step beyond that, where it's a long trip, particularly the Messenger, where it did so many flybys. It was away from Earth for past its initial burn. It was out in interplanetary space for a very long period of time, and then it has to be able to also survive the conditions of being as close to the sun as Mercury is. So it's currently not simulated in KSP, and I can't really think of a sane or easy or logical way to do that, where say some lower tier of probe would be able to survive going to the moon or going to Mars and Venus, like the early Ranger and Mariner type thing craft, but would it just explode when it gets near as close to the sun as Mercury is? And how do you kind of help the user know that a probe is only going to be useful for that? So perhaps like real remote tech kind of serves a good value there, because it really makes the user think about where is this craft going, how many days is it going to be out there, what's the distance to to Earth, so I can communicate back. So I think that's a good way to do it, and that's already implemented. I just am not a good enough player to play with remote tech, or it's just triage of time and learning. I just haven't put in the time to figure it out to succeed myself with that. But no, putting a probe out to Mercury, where while it's currently not actually required by any of my career contracts, it's really really useful practice for me. And I was a bit surprised I was able to do it with this craft without the hydrogen technology that I'm currently unlocking, because that allows you to throw more mass into orbit and also more mass out of the system near Earth, because you just have a much higher ISP engine that you're making use of. All right, so we're nearly at the burnout of this stage. Whoa, huge pitch down, of course. Excellent timing. And so I'm having a bit of trouble with because this is a really large delta V maneuver. There we go. I really want MechJeb to carry it out for me, because it's going to point in the right direction, kill the engines at the right time, start the burn at a really good time, if and only if it succeeds at that. And so I've tried a few things, not very successfully at all. I know I've done a couple things in the past that I've probably promptly forgotten. And we had other suggestions from other people, but nothing quite seems to work, because when I set up the maneuver, both MechJeb and I'm sure stock, they make an estimation of how long the burn time is going to be. So how long before that burn I should be carrying things out, like let's say node time is 0. Should I be starting the burn a minute beforehand, a minute and a half, whatever? So it does those calculations, but ultimately the most crucial thing is I only have one ignition left in this engine, and so I need this fuel to be stable, and I need just the engine to just throttle up the one time, so that it expends that one ignition only the time where I really am going to be using it. And that's problematic, because I want to shut down, go through the right-click menu and shut down the engine in order to do that, but in that process, I end up with a problem of a very bad problem of that it no longer estimates properly the time before the node that it should be running, and so I think I'm going to disallow MechJeb from time warp, which is a shame. I really like that it can time warp through many days and hours, whatever, to the window where you want to do the launch. But if I disallow it from doing that, that gives me the advantage of, rather than it popping out of time warp and me only having whatever it is, 10 seconds or whatever to get the engine ullaged before it's going to throttle up and spend the ignition, whether the engine's ready or not. See, look how much delta V. Okay, everything shut down. Program aborted, good. And do I still have my ignition? Yes, awesome. That is what I wanted. All right, and close that. So KOS closed. So I'm really where I'm a couple degrees off, but hey, that program is pretty good. It succeeded pretty well for me. So I'm just going to do a quick save. So Merc probe in orbit. Merc probe in orbit. Just in case I have to revert, because I'm kind of tired of doing the launch to here, to this point, and I've attempted to record this a few times, unfortunately. Hopefully this video is successful. But yeah, this is my Mercury probe. I've got it into orbit, and I'll just set up my maneuver node, because I've got a little more time in the video, but I don't intend to do that burn for Mercury in this video, just because I want to keep those separate in case I have trouble again. All right. So zoom out so we can see Mercury, set as target, and use MechJeb's maneuver planner. Many useful tools in here. Oh, and before I pull it up, I suppose I need to have this up before I select the planet. There we go. So the deep blue there is the low delta V that I'm targeting for. So lowest delta V anytime now. Not quite. Let's try that again. Lowest delta V still okay. Maybe. Anytime now, it says a burn in 51. You know what? That's a pretty good. That's pretty good delta V. And previous attempts, it suggested I wait 17 hours. But that actually doesn't look like it gets me an encounter, which is a little odd. So lowest delta V, reset, recalculate, lowest delta V, create, and it puts me half an hour out and doesn't show an encounter. So I'm not going to trust that. Let's zoom in and try to select the point we want. Okay, so let's try lowest delta V. Again, departure 13 hours. I'm a little more comfortable. And it's still not showing. It is still not showing the precise encounter, but I kind of have to trust that it's there. But yeah, that's basically what I've been using to plan the maneuver, and it looks like it has set it up for there. So let's see. Yeah, that looks pretty much right, because it's just crossing Mercury's orbit, just where. So this is where this ascending node or descending node is when we're going to be at the same, because it's a three-dimensional problem. So that's where we're actually going to be at the plane of Mercury. And so because those match up, I'm pretty confident that's about right, and I should be able to correct. Also, because this is a fairly efficient maneuver relative to how much delta V I currently have remaining, I'll be able to do kind of the little fidgets of what needs to remain to get it precisely targeted for Mercury. So I'm happy with that. Let me still feel like I've got a couple minutes here. Maneuver plan. Nope, that's not what I want. Maneuver node editor. Okay, so let's just do a couple of little tweaks to that. So if I burn a little harder, oh, okay, that gets it closer. Okay, so that at least makes it visible. So it's pretty close. Targeted approach. It's obviously not close enough for the true maneuver. So yeah, I'll have to make some kind of correction to get that right. So let me think. So we're coming in earlier. Here, let's select the sun so we can kind of look straight down on this. Oh, was it not? There we go. All right. So yeah, we're coming in a lot closer than Mercury does relative to the sun. Because say Mercury is 62.8 distance units from the sun at its current position, and here we're getting much closer. So something's a little awry there. Maybe it just doesn't like the orbital, the current plane I'm in, relative to Mercury. Well, I'll fidget with this a little bit, see if I can learn a little more about this before I carry out the burn. But thank you for watching RP-0 America. We have successfully put our Mercury. Come on, switch over. There we go. We've successfully put our Mercury probe and our Agena transfer vehicle into orbit here, and I will lock out the fuel on these just so I don't spend it while positioning this for the burn. So thanks for watching. Goodbye.